Hi guys, Frankie V here again, once again with another episode of Working with Power Tools, an effort on Frozen Sen's part to help ensure that our third-party mappers are up to date as to the current going-ons in the direction of porting Urban Terror on IDTech 3 / current version 4.2, soon to be .3, over to the Unreal 4 engine. So the ideal would be, of course, is once we release that there's no running around asking questions, particularly as to what defines or makes for what would be considered an Urban Terror HD map. And as some of you know, and I've been working on the conversion of Casa directly over to, hopefully as a one-to-one, over into Unreal 4. But at the same time, I want to from time to time stop what I'm doing and kind of think of what direction that I would want to head as far as the ideal of what is an Urban Terror HD map, which is a question that was asked well over a year ago, well, in some form or matter, as to expectations. Now, for those of you who just kind of wandered in, Urban Terror has been a game that's been around for the past close to 15 years now, and there are some, let's say, definable requirements as to the need to maintain, let's say, respectable specifications as to things like hardware, as well as to let's say, cater to the competitive nature that this game has become over the years, as to esport ideals, and that's certainly being put on the table as far as consideration goes. The other side of the coin, of course, is nothing sells a game better than graphics. In other words, if it's a sexy-looking game, that sells better than sex, so to speak, I guess. And if we can harvest a few new players just because things look good, then why not? If we can sort of fit that and tailor it into the current design objectives, using the features that are available inside of Unreal 4, that makes that possible. Then it becomes a matter of thinking ahead. Sitting down, and instead of going tunnel vision, go straight forward, take time every once in a while to sit back and kind of think over what it is that you're trying to accomplish here. So as far as putting things into what will be an Urban Terror HD map, I believe it to be something that can accomplish two goals in with one stone kind of idea, where those who like eye candy, like myself, who are willing to sacrifice a few frames per second for the benefit of having their ass fragged in style in a rather nice looking map. First, of course, the competitive nature of the game, where the psychology is more along the lines of being a NASCAR racer, that it's of no benefit for you to run around the track with 200 pounds of junk in the trunk, so to speak. So as to design pathways, then Unreal 4 lends itself quite nicely to this purpose. As far as a specification goes, as long as you know that's a specification beforehand. So in this case, we can have the best of both worlds by just putting in a switch that says, okay, I don't want any junk in the trunk. Boom, you're in one play mode, a pro mode, a competitive game mode. Versus, okay, I want some eye candy and have some really cool stuff happening. You flip the switch over to the other side, and you get the full Monty kind of idea. So that makes me happy because I can do the things that I want to do without having to worry about the back end of it. That somebody else that played the map said, "Hey, that looks great, but my frame rates are down to about 30." So to kind of let's say dwell on that a little bit, taking a tour of what I have set up so far. More or less, Casa is done as to some of the, let's say, the major points of maintaining somewhat of a one-to-one relationship. There is some of the, obviously, deviation in some of the material work. As you can see, as I've been working on and off and trying different things, particularly in this area over here, as to different types of mats and materials that we can apply to it. Obviously, smooth arching has been added, as opposed to the old way that you normally, a little bit of addition has been added to us, and then fake facade as a map object has been sort of pasted onto it and then try to match it up, where now it's just one solid block of data, or mesh geometry. Same thing over here. It is somewhat of a pain to have to try to match up the materials to adjoining walls, so you have this continuity of line across and what have you. I'll be talking about that in just a little bit here as to something that I'm working on that I plan on releasing to as for general use. I filled in what I would think would be the proper filling out of the marketplace. In a way that looking at the some of the demos and what have you. If you're up here, you have a clear line of sight all the way to the back, and obstructions, and you can still jump off and across the top of the tarps if you wish. And okay, it brings us up here. I made some changes to the ground material. That's just kind of a test type of thing. Let's see how things look. Drag and drop. Is it going to work? Yes or no? Okay, we come around to the back end here. Doors. I'm going to definitely be replacing that with something that's a little bit more in detail. I think we can afford it. The overall facade weight, as to say just the walls and what have you, is about 24K. That's in tris, so that brings us down to about 12 poly. So something that low can fit on a Commodore 64 as far as memory requirements goes. And I don't think that we could go any lower as far as maintaining the highest possible curve. Okay, let's see what we got here is some more detail in the archwork than obviously in 4.2, but doesn't add up to a hill of beans. Kind of like spitting in the pool. Theoretically, you could say you made the water rise, but it doesn't really amount to much. Some little bit more. Definitely need a little bit more detailing in the texture works. I think I could probably get away with this as the low end by just using the whatever it is that Casa comes with stock as far as material goes, and then just work on making sure that everything kind of matches up. It's comparing bricks. This brick here looks obviously nicer than this brick here, because this is a higher resolution. This is about 1K, I guess. Well, noisy neighbors. So that brings us back full circle to where we are. So with that quick look around, I'm at the stage where I'm kind of forking off for now into making map objects to replace some of the geometry that's already in here, and obviously, and that will be used in both versions, the low detail version as well as the high detail version, because most of it's going to be instant copy anyways. So if I make a really fancy window frame here with the proper shape louvers and what have you, and make it look half decent, even if I use fakey glass, then I could just copy that off for every occurrence of that, and the amount of performance hit as per object would be equal to the one that I make due to instant copying. So that's not going to be a factor. Well, obviously what's going to be a factor though is the amount of detail I want to put into the geometry. So if we take for a look at the rooftop here, this is a per surface paint job of a single face element. I got subdivision in there that needs to be removed, but I'm still working on that. As I say, I'm still working on that. And since this is the thinking part of it, of what I want to do or have to accomplish as far as eye candy goes, is the ability to switch out, say, high detail model elements. Say, for example, okay, let me hide this. And visibility, hide select. Actually, I can just go over here and go click, and it'll disappear. There's a little bit of fluff left. Click, and that's gone. Now, using a height map, you can create deformation into the object without having to model it. So here we have a tiled ceramic roof, and even at a distance it looks fairly decent, but at a distance it doesn't really need that much detail. So whether to include it or not is the question, but this leads into the bigger picture, so to speak, in that the actual height map of the material can create a proper deformation in the asset at the material level that you can model in proper stone and brick as to how it looks using the tessellation feature built in Unreal 4. Downside is Unreal 4 tessellation only works per face, which means you have to go in and subdivide your model into sections before applying a subdivision to it to get this kind of deformation. Now, my opinion on that area there is, well, so be it. option is still there that you can bring a built asset in and then assign a lower detail as a LOD to that. And for the purpose of having the sports car, that flip of the switch, the option could be that the player who decides they want their sports car flips the switch and it just uses and biases towards LOD, whatever LODs that's been assigned to this. So in this case, this is high density geometry. So I'll kind of show that. Hopefully it's selected. Visibility, show only selected. So if we go to wireframe mode, you can see there's a, once we get into tessellation, it does add a significant amount of geometry. Yet as far as poly loading goes, this is GPU rendered. Just the GPU, just information that is passed to the GPU that says, "Hey, tessellate this," boom, and this is what you get. So it's hardware rendering wise. As far as impact goes, it's I don't want to say that it's equal to its LD version, but I've done enough testing. 70 million tris test, as well as high geometry testing and so forth. The frame rate has little impact as far as let's say DX11 based systems goes. Obviously, if you don't have DX11, you're not going to get this. So don't worry, and the problem is not there. It'll just flatten out, and all you get is the subdivided version of this model. So that's an automatic optimization for people that have lower end machines. They don't have DX11. You don't get tessellation. It's just that fact of the matter. But the ability to be able to switch from the hero model to the LOD model fits well within our design specifications of being able to cater to both sides. Those who who want speed and performance versus those who like eye candy. Let's say for now, I'm going to say quote risk of frame rate drops. So going back, let's get into the last thing that's being worked on as far as design pathways decision goes. Oh boy, that's a right click visibility as to show all actors. I could have gone Control H, but so that brings us back to this, and we'll hide that, and maybe that again. We'll try not going off the beaten path too much this time around, hopefully, and get rid of that. Now, on to the next important factor, feature, whatever, the story. Okay, looking over a lot of the different maps that we have in our current stable, the most common technique that is used on the map on brush-based objects is dividing the material and planar mapping the two across a surface to create what looks like to be a single unified texture. So in other words, this top texture would be considered, the top texture would always be considered the predominant texture, which would just be this texture done as a tileable, and then the bottom would be the trim, which then the map maker would then take this material up top here, load this up, hopefully it's tileable, and then just simply Photoshop an opacity difference between the two of them. So the two of them, once you put them combined, like you apply the main material on top, as trim on the bottom, you can adjust on the brush the scale as well as the placement of the material in relative space to one another. So it creates a real nice continuity between within the material flow. So same thing over here. Same two materials, but one has a blending for the trim piece as versus the stock piece that's kind of painted on top of it. Try to do it that kind of idea as a single material. The only problem with that is it becomes rather miserable to try to align things, because with mesh-based geometry you don't have the tools and the ability to just kind of hack, havoc, whatever you want to call it, move your UV mapping around and scaling it and making things match up as to various objects next to it. So this wall here is totally too much higher, since say this wall here is where we would probably want a little bit more connectivity to it. So that would mean taking the two objects and trying to overmap the two of them so that the seams would kind of line up and what have you. Not a fun time doing that at the core asset level. So this here actually turned out pretty good as a map blend, but still not good enough as to being able to composite in Unreal for the materials that you need, so you can start matching things up as to this kind of workflow spec idea. This also to kind of present the idea as to being able to use the tessellation / height map information. Once again, we need tessellation in the surface to be able to get the kind of thing that we want out of it. So in this case, the proper tessellation would be something that looks like this, which is just I just simply use spline shapes to create the pattern, and then use Garment Maker to give me this type of topology. Now this is the type of topology that the tessellation does actually create to some degree, and was somewhat disappointed that without X number of segmentations or subdivisions to the surface, it wouldn't do it as per scale over the face. So in other words, you have one patch, you up it to 2, you get 2 patches, 3 patches, until you have the entire surface covered with this type of topology. This works really well, as opposed to what I found with polygon-based surfaces is it still wants to maintain that boxy, curvy look, even no matter how much you tessellate it. So and as well as to get the same kind of result that you could with as far as lower tessellation goes. You're looking at I would say, in my opinion, probably a 10-to-1 ratio as to the difference in the topology. If you don't believe me, you can just look at the tutorial I did back about how to make terrain in using 3ds Max, and then how to bring that that 50K terrain model down to something like 5K kind of deal, and still maintain the overall resolution using this type of material. Works really well for anything that has shape or form or smoothness to it. So that's the kind of material that you would want to make your initial walls with. But as far as doing a 1, 2, 3 paint job, there's definitely a need for the ability to apply a composite of different materials, one on top of the other, based on the same kind of subdivision idea that I just kind of mentioned over here. And what I'm working on is this thing here called Supermat, which is the German for super matte or material. And with this, you can create instant copies and apply a composite of different materials, as well as different material masks, to create the same kind of effect that you would normally have to do with Photoshop. Now, this I'll be going into more detail because of this particular material as a composite material in the future. And as the plan is to release this under Creative Commons, so anybody that wishes can make use of it for whatever purpose they wish. So if you're making a materials package or what have you, and just to kind of point things out, there's a lot of lovely types of materials. And if I go to my fave of faves right now, which is the architectural texture materials, and if you go ahead and just apply them, then boom, it looks really good, except for the fact that this really isn't designed for any kind of fancy manipulation as you would be used to in, say, GDK Radiant, using brushes and being able to align your textures and UV mappings and what have you, so it creates the proper sizing and blah blah blah, etc. And of course, that doesn't composite that two-element need and requirement of having a top and bottom part of a single wall facade type of idea. So in reality, this is a showpiece. You can put a material texture onto any sphere, and it'll just look good. And you can just kind of drag and drop it and take a look at it as for deciding, hey, that looks pretty good. Well, that's a better looking brick, though. I need that brick, and be able to kind of window shop and add your materials this way before deciding that you want to actually composite that type of material onto a surface, which is what this is all about. Now, built into the material, of course, is a series of nodes, different nodes that allow you to accomplish this. At the moment, this is alpha stage. It's I hope to add a little bit more to it, like for example, grime and dirt masks and leakage and what have you, so you can composite everything that you need for that wall in one single material. But at an alpha stage here right now, we got to make sure that this is all going to work, and I do plan on releasing an alpha. If you want to play around with it, that's free and fair use for you to do so. But as for instancing, this is where materials, where the real work is done, is by creating an instant of a very elaborate material as a master. So none of the ones that I have, well, some of them have some features, others are missing others, what have you, but none of them combine everything that I need for this particular purpose. So with one material, you just click on it, and you can say create instance, which then creates an instance to the same material, and if we apply that to the wall, boom, this becomes a child of this parent. Now the nice thing about a child or an instant copy is you can add parameters to it that you can change to different various components of the master. In this case, I am using a two-part material system to be able to composite it. I won't go into too much details. I plan before releasing an actual release version of this to do a full out documentation onto it, so you know what button you're pressing and what it's supposed to do, versus just handing it off to you and say, yeah, there you go, fend for yourself and figure it out. So that'll probably be typed written document as a readme, plus maybe a video, follow-up video as to actual practical use. But the idea behind this is to kind of pull this off, to kind of show the let's say the big deal about it all is the ability to move your UV mapping around a static model and position and scale it properly relative to other objects around it. So if we need to scale one wall until it matches another, so you have one continuous matching without this ugly seam about it, this will allow you to do that, because you can change the scaling and position of any of the two materials that have been applied. So you can move it up and down. You can change the scaling to bigger to smaller. Like we're getting down and it's getting blurry, and we can change the UV mapping as to height, and we can change the mask location as well, or its scaling relative to, so if we want a much more harder line across it, we can decrease that until we get this much more natural detailing going on, as well as its relative position. And I think this changes our position, and this changes, I believe, our overall height scale. This one here, yeah, we just gotta drive that up a bit more. No, it's actually needing to go down a bit more. I gotta figure out how to use my own tools. As you can see, it's scaled right off the map. Gotta change the horizontal positioning. Where are you? I should change with the vertical and horizontal. Okay. Anyways, we can change the positioning and verticality of map 1, as well as its scaling. Okay, so we can create a little bit more tighter bricks, so to speak. And let's see if we can find our UV map for our mask. Mask creates a division between the two materials. Yeah, okay, that didn't go off the way it's planned. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we can create the height. Then we just have to increase the scale. Okay, obviously I need to name these better so I can identify them quicker. Okay, here we go. No, that's just changing the position. I need to change the UV mapping. Not that way. And that's getting smaller. That's getting bigger. Okay, there we go. Okay. And then we can change the position. And our scaling. And our positioning. Okay, I'm going to mark these better, because obviously I'm getting a little bit confused as me. So that is definitely a fail on my part. And so this would be material 1 variables. The bottom would be material 2 as a composite on top of that, so we can increase or decrease the change this position, obviously, and just keep playing with the values until we hit onto, here we come, here we go. So we got we got a much nicer subdivision as part of the complete material. Now, depending on, as I said, if we actually create a proper subdivided material, we can add height and bump to it, and then this would just kind of come out like a rock bottom, and this as a tileable brick on the top of it. So anyways, I think that's about as much as I want to cover. You can see why I kind of left this for last. This is a little side project that is work in progress. As I said, as I just mentioned, I'm obviously going to have to rename some of these things so they become a little bit more obvious as to the purpose. Particularly bigger numbers being better versus smaller numbers driving you crazy trying to find it. But this definitely does accomplish the type of blending that we had as demonstrated over here as to overmapping textures that can be applied to a mesh geometry. So the benefit to this is, unlike in the past, what I was doing is I kept jumping back and forth between Unreal 4 and 3ds Max to keep adjusting UV mappings and etc., etc. And with this, I can just sort of say, okay, I could just planar map it and then just create an instant copy. And with the instant copy, we can certainly create another instant copy if we wish, and put in down here. Just a quick peekaboo is you can override the different types of materials that are assigned to it by default. I'm in the process of finding some default PBR materials I can use by permission as a sample. And you can change different things like color tones, and as well as input-output values as far as spec, normal, and roughness, and what have you. So, in general, it's I guess you could call it a Swiss Army knife of composite materials, and then hopefully down the road it'll become some other means of being able to composite materials in real time under something that is let's say more of a serious tool rather than a stopgap solution. Then that would be great. Okay, so anyways, finishing this off, till the next one, I think I've covered everything that I think is rather important at this stage and point in time, and we'll catch you on the next episode.